We begin tonight with Trump's latest threat to Iran, an incendiary, uncensored ultimatum. Here is the President of the United States in his own words. Quote, Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the fucking strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump. So imagine on Easter morning, you wake up and the President of the United States is using that kind of language, profanity, mocking the faith, threatening the country, possibly violating international law, but using even this phrase, praise be to Allah, in a mocking way. It's an expression used by Muslims that is an expression of faith. It carries a lot of sincerity, and the president is using it in this very mocking and threatening way in a tweet that is full of threatening violence.
Well, imagine also if a Democrat had used that phrase, there would be cries of creeping Sharia. And
if President Obama had used that phrase on Easter morning.
Exactly.
We never hear
I know I'm not supposed to get upset about the lack of decorum and the trashiness and just the utter classlessness of Donald Trump. But then he does something like this on Easter morning, and it really just throws me in a loop again. And I really am I cannot believe that this characterless man is the president of the United States and is behaving this way and representing his people, a majority Christian nation. On Easter Sunday, he is this unholy and unhinged and being the antithesis of Jesus Christ and his teachings and what Easter is supposed to be all about. It is just infuriating.
I think the other reason why this is poorly timed, not that there would be good timing for this kind of tweet, is that we just had this amazing rescue of an airman.
Exactly.
Right? And this should be a moment of relief, of celebration. It's a win. And Donald Trump can't even take the win here. Instead of talking about that, instead of talking about saving our brave service member who, nobody knew if this person was even still alive, we're talking about this crass, gross, and, you said unholy, I guess I would say disrespectful at the very least, tweet.
Well, there's the disrespect and just how beneath the office that he occupies the entire thing is. But there's also just the fact that it masks what is fundamentally right now the president of the United States repeatedly posting on social media a premeditated plan to commit war crimes also. I feel like we are, I think, giving that enough attention. I'm not sure that everyone else is actually giving that enough attention. And it could not have been more, to your point, Elise, contrasted by the message of the Pope this morning, who seems to really, over the last several weeks, been on a tear, trying to send a message directly to the president, to J.D. Vance, to Hegseth, without, for the most part, ever calling them out by name. The contrast can be more clear.
But who does he do this for? Who do you think? Who's waking up in the morning and expecting him to have this rant, or who is he doing that? I mean, it seems like this is a core belief of who he is and how he functions.
Well, he seems to love talking in, sadistic war criminal ways and bomb back to the Stone Age and having no capacity to have empathy for anyone other than himself. Obviously that's been a decades lifelong pattern, but, we just see it in sharp relief this morning. And he, it's like a child, which I don't want to insult a child this way by saying that, but that's bored and is acting up because the missing airman was rescued after a heroic 36-hour mission, being injured and climbing up 7,000 feet to safety with only a pistol, and the nation could be celebrating that victory, that the goodness that he's coming home, that our military was able to execute that mission, and instead we've got this jerk just being Donald Trump.
But this is a president who always misses opportunities when they're handed to him on a platter to bring the country together, right. To take those moments of unity and bravery and shared values and flush them down the toilet. I mean, it is actually like one of the few constants.
And to your point, we'll talk more about the Pope's message at the end of the show and how much of a contrast that it is compared to what we're hearing from the administration. But buried under President Trump's erratic post this morning is that U.S. military rescue of the missing airmen. Trump said that he was seriously wounded and rescued from deep inside the mountains of Iran, then teased ahead to a news conference tomorrow at 1 p.m. It was moments later that he then made that post that we were just talking about, threatening more bombardment, possible more war crimes. And today he is given several interviews with similar escalatory rhetoric. He told ABC News that this conflict should be over in days, not weeks, but that if no deal is made, he's blowing up the whole country with, quote, very little off the table. To Axios, then, he said that the U.S. is deep in negotiations with Iran, but, quote, if they don't make a deal, I am blowing up everything over there. And then to The Hill, he said he is not ruling out ground troops in Iran if they don't make a deal. Now, this all comes as the president had already threatened to blow up Iran's power plants, which has alarmed human rights and war crimes experts who have called it a potential war crime. Joining us now is MS National Security and Intelligence Analyst Mark Polymeropoulos. He's also a former senior intelligence officer at the CIA. Also with us is Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, retired commander of U.S. Army in Europe and author of his new book, If I Don't Return, A Father's Wartime Journal. It's great to have both of you with us on a night that I think the country is breathing a sigh of relief that all of the men and women involved in this operation returned safely with that second airman. General, talk to me about your assessment of this mission, how daring it was to try to rescue him, and your reaction to what we have learned as to how it unfolded.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was truthfully no surprise to me the way it unfolded, because this is practiced continuously by airmen. Anyone that's flying over a country, they do missions. They have ability to pull people out with something they call CSAR, Combat Search and Rescue. Those are the kind of helicopters, the aircraft, the special operators that go in and find individuals who were shot down over territory. This has happened several times. Most recently, probably in Bosnia, when we lost a pilot in that country. So these individuals, both in the operations field, who go in to find these individuals, are well trained. It's one of their mission sets. But the other thing is the pilots, every pilot that flies in the Navy and the Air Force and in the Army over a country and has the potential of being shot down, go through extensive training in something called SERE, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. It is extremely demanding training. They are put under similar circumstances in training centers where they aren't certainly shot down, but they are put out in a location where they have to find their way back, signal people to let them know where they are. And it's a fascinating dynamic. I've been through some of that training. I've always planned for it with the units I've commanded, because that's what you have to do whenever you lose a soldier or an airman. But the third thing is just the interesting part about the equipment that was damaged and that went into the area. It has a reflection back in the 1980 Special Operations mission that went in to try and rescue those hostages that were being held by the Iranian desert. And it turned into a disaster. And it, in fact, was the birth of our Special Operations Forces. I can only kind of contemplate what happened with the C-130 that was destroyed, the two Black Hawk helicopters that were destroyed. What you have when you put a C-130 on the ground, you're showing the pictures of it now, and I'll point out as you span over that, those two propellers are not bent at all. So those weren't, that was not an aircraft that crashed. It was exploded, as the U.S. is saying what happened. This airplane did not crash in the area. It was not shot down, because those propeller blades would have been bent had they done that when they hit the ground. But, you know, C-130s have something called short takeoff and landing capabilities, STOL. So they can go into a dirt strip, not a paved runway. And sometimes those dirt strips, when they're assessed as to whether or not they can carry the aircraft, it turns out that they can't. So sometimes they get stuck on the ground, or they have some kind of mechanical problem because they hit too hard, or they ingest foreign area objects into the propellers, into the engines. So that was probably the reason they were that aircraft had to be destroyed on the ground. But an awful lot of equipment was basically blown up because they couldn't get it out of the area, and it was a significant cost in the mission to get that one pilot out of there. But I'll go back to one more thing. When you're talking about getting prisoners of war or down pilots out of an area, you spare no expense. I said this yesterday on a program, that you move mountains to get individuals out, and damn with the equipment full speed ahead. You've got to get those people out of the countries where they've been shot down.
Mark, can you talk to us about the role that the CIA played here? The reporting describes them even going to the lengths of spreading false information, a false narrative and story on the ground to give the military time to find this service member and to make sure that they were able to execute this mission properly. Can you talk us through the stages of the work here and what all of that involves?
Sure, and let me just also kind of echo General Hertling, is that, whenever we went into harm's way, and when I went into Afghanistan and Iraq, there was always comforting to know that the U.S. government would really, literally move heaven and earth to get you back if you were shot down, if you were captured. And so, the U.S. military, Joint Special Operations Command, and the U.S. intelligence community really lived up to that in this case, and that's a really good thing. It was a very remarkable day and a great operation. Look, and General Hertling knows this, the global war on terrorism, there was 20 years of the Joint Special Operations Command and the CIA working really closely together on numerous operations, whether it's covert action, kinetic operations, or things such as this, such as personnel recovery. There's an entire ecosystem that's involved here. The CIA will recruit assets, will certainly assist JSOC personnel in planning for this, and it looks like in Iran we had those capabilities. And so when there was the notification that an aviator was down, the agency, through some type of capabilities, and this story is going to come out eventually. In one case, again, it's been reported that we had some technical means in which we could spoof the location of the downed aviator, so the Iranians would go to the wrong spot, in essence. And at the same time, there might have been, what we call non-assisted recovery or assisted recovery networks in which local assets on the ground could help. Again, some reporting, and it's certainly not confirmed, is that the agency was able to, in essence, positively ID the aviator's his exact location. That area of Iran, in fact, is where there are actually some forces that are not, some population who's not friendly to the regime. So the agency kind of puts this all together in a package and plays, in essence, a really important supporting role. But it's this incredible ballet together with the U.S. military, born after 20 years of doing this, of rehearsing it, sometimes practicing it. I remember the operation a little bit different in Iraq when Jessica Lynch was taken prisoner, and Special Operations community ended up rescuing her. So really, it was an extraordinary day, and I think this is going to be one for the ages. And hats off to those who really risked their lives to bring this aviator home.
General Hertling, I have to agree with Mark that, the movie that's going to be made about this airman, his survival, and then the rescue is really going to be quite incredible, just, in the little bits of information we know now. I just wanted to know your opinion on the state of air defenses and the capacity of the Iranian forces at this stage in the game to impact our air superiority when we were able to go into this hostile area fairly deep inside Iran and do this successful extraction.
Well, you got to remember, Elise, it wasn't all that easy. A couple of airplanes were shot down. A couple of helicopters were shot at, and crew members were injured. So that tells me, first of all, you have the potential, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs has been echoing this over the last several weeks, that we have destroyed a lot of air defense equipment. The S-300, S-400 missiles that Iran have that have been given to them by Russia, which are really good. The potential for shoulder-fired weapon system that the Russians have also given the Iranians. Iranians, which are really good. But you still have small arms fire against helicopters. You know, that's what's probably struck some of those UH-60s, those special operations aircraft that were going in as part of this package. And you know, there have been films showed all weekend long that are probably not understandable by civilians who don't experience the military. But there was one picture of a fueler with two helicopters, two special operations helicopters refueling behind it, probably at about 2,000 feet above the ground or something. That's within rifle fire. You can shoot things up at them. So when you say assess the air defense, I don't have capability to look at any classified intelligence. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense have said they've all been obliterated, which I've said multiple times on air. That's not the case. My experience in combat is every time you think you've totally wiped out the enemy, they'll come back and you're going to take 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. There is more stuff in Iran. I'm convinced of it because I saw the same thing in Iraq. Every time we thought we had found all the arms caches and the weaponry, the next day we'd find 10 more. These are governments that actually run part of their politicalization by gaining weapons systems, and they hide them in Iran in caves and in underground facilities. So there is still a capability within Iran. I'll say one more thing and comment on what Mark said a minute ago. You know, those pilots, when you watch them get into aircraft, not many people notice this either, they're wearing vests with all different kinds of survival equipment on them, to include a crypto radio that they can signal. This individual pilot, or if he was a weapons systems officer, I don't know which was the pilot and which one was the Wizzo, but they had all kinds of stuff that they've been trained to use. But I'll say one more thing. Whenever you put troops in an area, you know, only about 20% of the people who are fighting are the fighting force. There's a whole bunch of folks who are behind them in the support forces. And the amount of people that contributed to basically pulling these individuals out of harm's way was very significant. And sometimes we don't calculate that into the number of forces that are in the area. But boy, that's sure a heavy load for some of these guys to be making.